Here's my review of Bad Monkey. This is a show that I wasn't really liking at first, but after the first about 2-3 episodes, I really start to dug it. And I think that's just because these characters are just a lot of fun to be around. I mean, Vince Vaughn is great. I mean, I'm not going to act like I've seen him in that much, but he's one of those actors where every time I do see him in anything, he's just so much fun to watch. Because and just like in here, he almost seems so grumpy, but so funny and likable at the same time. Like, he doesn't want to be where he is, but at the same time, he's having fun with the people around him. And, like, this show just wouldn't work nearly as well without him. And in this show, he plays a former police officer turned health inspector and goes to Miami. And this is a very complex show, so I'm probably not going to be able to touch on every detail. But part of this is almost like a mystery show involving a human arm. We find this human arm, and then a big part of the show, maybe not, is like, why is there a random human arm here? Whose body is this? What happened? And it's kind of revolves in this mystery, but the mystery gets quickly solved. We quickly find out that it was this guy named Nick's arm who willingly cut it off because of his psycho girlfriend, Eve. And these characters are a lot of fun. And Eve is just a straight up psycho, but she's a fun psycho to watch. Basically, they cut off his arm almost to fake his death. And you can just tell Eve does not care about him at all. But it is just a sad relationship to watch. And you just hate her so much. So when she finally gets what's coming to her, you're like, yes, finally. Like I said, this show is entirely carried, I think, by a lot of its characters. Vince Vaughn is just great. And I feel like this show, because it doesn't really feel like the plot is super deep, that it has to be carried by the characters. In order for there to be... You could write a good character, but if you don't have entertaining actors, it can just fall flat. And fortunately, Vince Vaughn is, I think, able to be very entertaining in almost no matter what he's in. Whether he's in, like, in Fred Claus from, I don't even know how many years ago, but I really like that Christmas movie. Or that movie he did with Catherine Newton called Freaky, where he's able to also play, like, almost a charismatic psychopath. He's just consistently so much fun to be around. And in this show, his personality is just so... It's hard to explain. Like, you almost feel like he's very pessimistic and negative, but at the same time, very upbeat. And if you watch the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. And when it comes to fun characters, like, there's another character called the Dragon Queen, who is like this kind of fortune teller kind of character. And I think that she's almost progressively gets more interesting because she has this arc of being this like weird voodoo magician girl, and then she admits, no, I don't believe in any of this. This is not real. And then she kind of almost regains her faith in the magic. And then at the end, if you actually pay attention, you do realize, oh, she was right, but kind of, like, even if she probably didn't know it was going to end up that way, but she did end up being right whether she liked it or not. Even if she didn't like how her own story ended, she was right in many ways in regards to other characters. And I'm just going to go into like full-blown spoilers here for this show, so if you don't want to know anything else, just stop watching. So I'm going to go into full-blown spoilers from now on. Okay, so basically the Dragon Queen, there's this fight between her and Eve, and eventually Eve like basically kills her. But as she is dying, she basically predicts, like, no, you will die, Eve. You will die from this particular way, and you will be alone. And of course, Eve is just terrible, and she doesn't believe it. And then she almost dies in, like, the most comedically unlucky way, where I was watching this show, and I was like, oh, wow, she really got away after all the terrible things she did. But then it was just something as simple as choking on her food, and then she actually fell off her house and just died. You were so happy when this happened, because this is just the most selfish, just terrible person. All she cares about really is her dog. She never even cared about Nick. And it's just like such interesting poetic justice, I thought. And it's interesting because they do almost introduce like this is a very relatively grounded show, although this world basically does have voodoo and magic, even if it's not like super out there. And it's just a very interesting thing to think about. And I think the relationship between Nick and Eve is just very compelling because in this show, I mean, Nick is kind of torn between, like, because he's got a daughter. And you feel almost like, you almost hate him because you're like, why are you ignoring your own daughter for this psychopathic girl? Just because you think she's attractive. And it's just a sad story. You almost feel bad for Nick, but at the same time, it's like, dude, what you're doing is terrible. Like, you're cutting off your own arm. You're almost committing these crimes just because this girl said you did. It's just kind of sad. Like, so you feel bad for him. You're at the same time, like, you brought this all upon yourself, buddy. And in terms of other characters, we have, like, Rosa, the mortician, who Vince Vaughn basically has this relationship with. And then her sister's very fun, too, although she's not really into that much. And like I said, it's for a story that I feel like isn't really super deep. It's the characters that make it enjoyable. And Rosa's a very fun character. I think all the characters are very fun. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff here. And I hope it gets a season 2. I don't know if it's confirmed, but, like, I just want to explore more of these characters because, like, I think back, I'm like, the story isn't really super memorable. It is an interesting mystery. Like once you kind of find out where that arm came from, it doesn't really feel like there's much going on outside of following these individual stories. Like, whether you're following the Dragon Queen testing her fate, or faith, I should say, and then whether she doesn't believe it, then she does. That could be an interesting story, but it's always, like, kind of out there because we're in, like, the Bahamas, and then we go over to Miami, and it's just kind of all over the place. So it doesn't really feel like a lot of these stories intersect well. But like I said, I think the best way to really describe this show is it's a very chill show in terms of, because the story's not deep, you're just having fun with these characters. And yes, there is, like, this mystery, but it's just, I feel like it's more of an atmosphere, especially when we're in such beautiful locations. A lot of it is just kind of us spending time with these people, whether they're good people like Vince Vaughn's character or terrible people like Eve. And I think that's just the best way to describe it. It's very chill, and it does, I think, like I said, I think it starts slow, but I think it progressively gets crazier, and the characters become, like, we're following these characters who are, especially with Eve, getting crazier. And Andrew's kind of the straight man in this. He seems like a relatively normal guy, although he's very sarcastic, just like Vince Vaughn. It's able to kind of keep it grounded. So yeah, I thought that this show started off slow, but I ended up really liking it by the end.